Welcome to a special journey, where the dazzling lights of fame not only illuminate glory, but also reveal the solitude, the choices, and the quiet disappearances of stars the world once adored. He once made the world laugh, then vanished, as if he never existed. She was the icon of youth, and quietly disappeared before anyone could say goodbye. In a world where stage lights once stole every gaze, there were names so dazzling the world would pause just to watch them shine. But then, like a spotlight abruptly extinguished in the thick of night, they vanished, without a warning, without goodbye. When the spotlight becomes a burden, some stars choose to walk away. Rick Moranis was once a staple in late 80s to early 90s comedy films. With his charmingly awkward roles in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and Spaceballs, he made millions laugh in darkened theaters. But at the peak of his career, Rick suddenly disappeared. His wife passed away from cancer, leaving behind 2 young children. When the lights went out at home, he realized the lights out there no longer mattered. Rick walked away from every contract, every offer, and stayed home to be a father, cooking meals, comforting nightmares, reading bedtime stories. At first, he planned to return in a few years, but then he discovered he didn't miss the cameras, didn't miss the chaos, didn't miss the rush of fame. Rick never officially retired. He just faded away. And strangely, he never looked back. If it were you, what would you choose? Glory or family? Likewise, in order to preserve herself, another star, Amanda Bynes, was forced to retreat from the very world that once crowned her as a youth icon. Amanda was a Nickelodeon gem. With big eyes, a radiant smile, and impeccable comedic timing, she ruled teen cinema in films like She's the Man and What a Girl Wants. But behind the laughter were long nights of depression, the pressure to be flawless, and the lingering shadow of a childhood never truly lived. At 24, Amanda tweeted simply, "I don't enjoy acting anymore, so I quit." The world gasped, but she didn't. For the first time in her life, Amanda got to say no. What do you think? Walking away from fame at 24, foolish or fearless? Rick and Amanda. 2 generations, 2 different roads, but one same decision: to protect the human part of themselves before it was devoured by the current of fame. Their disappearance wasn't weakness. It was a quiet rebellion, a reminder that not all light is warm, but not everyone gets to walk away willingly. Some are consumed by the very light they chase and collapse on stage while the world still watches. Click the next episode to uncover the dark side Hollywood never reveals. Some people never get the chance to step off the stage because the spotlight was too bright, too blinding, too seductive, that it swallowed them whole, while they were still standing there, bowing for the last time. Not everyone leaves the top. Sometimes the top is the fall. Jack Gleeson, the boy with deep eyes and a calm voice, made the world lose its mind with his portrayal of Joffrey Baratheon in Game of Thrones. His performance was so powerful, so disturbingly real, that people forgot he was acting. But that brilliance became a curse. Audiences couldn't separate Jack from his character. They sent threats. They hurled insults. They looked at him as if he truly was the monster he portrayed. Can you imagine? Being just 21, but each walk outside felt like a battle with your own shadow. After season 4 of Game of Thrones, Jack announced his retirement from acting. No drama, no tears. just a quiet. I no longer want to work in front of a camera. He returned to Ireland, studied philosophy, searched for peace before the spotlight could burn it all away. What do you think? A gifted actor walking away with the whole world ahead, weak or wise? Jack Gleeson left while young, but Michael J. Fox fought until the end. The man with the radiant smile in Back to the Future was once the face of a generation, but behind that smile were thousands of lines rehearsed in tears, shoots halted by hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Diagnosed with Parkinson's at 29, Michael kept going, acting, laughing, making others believe everything was fine. Until one day, watching DiCaprio forget his lines in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he cried, because he saw himself in that moment and knew it was time to stop. In 2020, Michael J. Fox announced his complete retirement from acting, not because he lost, but because he chose to preserve what remained in peace. Jack Gleeson walked away because he was mistaken for his character. Michael J. Fox walked away because he couldn't recall the lines that made him. One was young, one was a legend, but they shared this. They were no longer themselves on stage. And when you're no longer yourself, even the brightest light feels cold. But what about those who didn't walk away? Who fought, rebelled, self-destructed, and ended up in the depths of no return to meet the stars who lit their own flames and paid the price. Some stars chose to step away. Some were swept away. But then, there are those who were never allowed to return. Not because they didn't want to, but because the door was locked, bolted, and the key thrown away. This is the chapter of no return, where fame is no longer glory, but a sentence. From queen of cuisine to cultural exile, Paula Deen once dominated American TV with her southern charm and buttery recipes. But in 2013, a confession that she had used racial slurs in the past cut her entire empire off. She wept on television, begged for forgiveness. But social media doesn't grant second chances. Sponsors pulled out, networks canceled her shows, a culinary kingdom turned to dust. Do you believe an apology can erase the wounds of an outraged society? From movie star to fugitive Randy Quaid, once Oscar-nominated, beloved by audiences, became a strange figure. Charged with credit card fraud, squatting in a house he once owned, tax evasion, he and his wife fled to Canada. They claimed Hollywood was hunting them down, from admired artist to a self-proclaimed fugitive. Maybe the ultimate loss of control is when you can't tell what's real anymore. If you still feel they're here with us, hit subscribe. Let's keep them alive through memory. When a golden voice becomes an endless debt, Toni Braxton, voice of Unbreak My Heart, was the R&B queen of the 90s. But stardom couldn't save her from two bankruptcies. Shady contracts, heart disease-halting tours, and a too costly lifestyle drained her completely. She even sold her music rights just to survive. Every comeback is laced with quiet sorrow. When music is no longer an escape but a reminder of all that's lost, how do you keep singing? The tragedy of a heart named Kurt and a woman never forgiven Courtney Love was never easy to love, but she was a fierce, wild rock icon. After Kurt Cobain's death, she tried to carry on, but scandals, lawsuits, suspicions, and shocking statements made her an outcast. She burned through Kurt's inheritance, accumulated debts, got tangled in drugs, and became a ghost among artists. Some people don't die, but the world buries them piece by piece. A mind once beloved, now lost in its own memory. Gary Busey, once Oscar-nominated, an action star, a living legend. But after a devastating motorcycle accident, he suffered a traumatic brain injury, changing his personality entirely. Erratic behavior, aggression, confusion. Studios avoided him. He was no longer the Gary Busey people knew, and no one said goodbye, because no one knew when he left. The worst tragedy isn't being forgotten, it's being there, but no one recognizing you anymore. If you ever believed that talent alone would keep you in the spotlight, this chapter will change your mind. There are roads you can't return from. Some doors once closed never open again, no matter how long you wait. And some icons are now just echoes. The golden trap, where we dive into another kind of downfall, where the golden glow of wealth is the most dangerous trap of all. Some lights don't come from the stage or the screen. They come from money, from million-dollar contracts, 100-room mansions, private jets, luxury purchases just to prove you're winning. But that same glow burned them all. Chapter 4 is about golden traps, where people don't fall because they failed, but because success was too big to hold. When there's too much money to even know how to spend it, MC Hammer earned $33 million in 1991 alone. He bought 21 racehorses, a 200-room mansion, and hired 200 full-time staff just to serve him. Monthly expenses? Over $500,000. But only a few years later, Hammer was broke. Flopped albums, plummeting income, unpaid taxes, seized assets. A rap king suddenly standing before bankruptcy court. When you live like you can't lose, just one loss can take everything. Living like a princess, sleeping in a trailer, Pamela Anderson was once a global sex symbol. Tens of millions in assets, homes in Canada and Malibu, lavish lifestyle, fashion, private flights. But failed projects, overspending, bad loans, and unpaid taxes brought her down. She once lived in a trailer with her kids and asked an ex to help settle her debts. You thought Hollywood fame lasts forever? It has an expiration date, sometimes a short one. The youngest Baldwin, and a downward spiral without breaks. Stephen Baldwin, youngest of the famous Baldwin brothers, starred in hit films and reality TV shows. But reckless spending, bad investments, and tax debts led to bankruptcy in 2009. Declared under $50,000 in assets, over $2 million in debt, home foreclosed, credit maxed out, a once poster name reduced to court paperwork. Money doesn't forgive, and negative numbers can drown a lifetime. From undefeated fighter to victim of his own fists, Mike Tyson once held $400 million. From boxing and endorsements. But he spent like he punched, fast, hard, and without restraint. White tigers, luxury cars, yachts, castles. A Saz Chamelius entourage, a Javi Fizetesben Serapel. Then, nothing. Bankruptcy, lawsuits, tens of millions in debt, and a lost self. Not all punches come from opponents. Some come from the very hands that once wore the crown. a Hollywood prince swept from his kingdom. Brendan Fraser was the heartthrob of blockbusters like The Mummy, George of the Jungle, but in the height of fame, he vanished. Why? Divorce took most of his assets. A massive alimony deal made his income insufficient. Add repeated injuries from action roles, and he had to stop working. Step by step, Brendan fell, not from failure, but from costs higher than his income. Some don't fall because they slip, but because they're pushed by what they once called love and success. They all touched the dream, but they forgot one truth. Money isn't a reward, it's a test. And many don't pass, rising from ashes, where you'll meet those who fell hard but stood up again. Not to be famous, but to simply be human. If Chapter 4 was where the light of money burned everything down, then Chapter 5 is where those once buried in ashes suddenly rise from what seemed like the end, not with old fame, but with a new self. This is the chapter of resurrection, not for fame, but because they needed to live. From The Mummy to a living miracle, Brendan Fraser vanished from Hollywood like a forgotten soul. But in 2022, he returned in The Whale, a role that made entire theaters rise in applause through tears. After nearly a decade battling physical injuries, a sexual harassment case, and financial loss, Brendan didn't come back to be famous. He came back to be true to himself. Have you ever fallen so hard you had nothing left, only to discover you still had one thing: perseverance? If you still feel they're here with us, hit subscribe. Let's keep them alive through memory. The Humbled Giant, and a podcast of redemption, Mike Tyson, after bankruptcy, prison, and media ridicule, came back to what he does best: telling the truth about himself. His podcast, Hotboxin' with Mike Tyson, is not just storytelling. It's self-surgery, bitterness, mistakes, lostness, and healing. He also succeeded in cannabis investments, but this time, he didn't buy a crown. Sometimes, you don't need to be a champion again. Just come back with your heart intact. The woman who broke now sings like she never shattered Toni Braxton once declared bankruptcy. Yet she returned to music. Smaller shows, humbler stages, but full of emotion. She's no longer queen of the stage, but queen of resilience. And when she sings "Unbreak My Heart" again, the audience doesn't just hear a song. They hear a heart that broke and healed. Some voices aren't meant for applause, but to remind oneself, I'm still here. From screen shadows to real-life storyteller Meg Ryan, once the rom-com icon, didn't return loudly. Instead of clinging to screen beauty, she became a director. She tells small, everyday stories, soft yet deep, just like how she once made the world fall in love with her gaze. Meg's return had no fireworks, but it had meaning. Sometimes coming back doesn't mean standing out. It means stepping into life as yourself. Gary Busey, after brain injury and lost years, returned not to act, but to speak. He now travels sharing his story, from stardom to accident to neurological disorder to the days no one recognized him. And now he uses that memory to help others see it's never too late to return. A comeback isn't more fame, it's peace with the past. None of them returned seeking fame. They returned because they once lost themselves, and now they want to find that person again. The final chapter, Forever Present, where we speak of those who never returned. But in our memories, they never really left. Not everyone gets the chance to return. Some, when they fall, it's forever. And yet, strangely, though they are gone, we never stop talking about them, as if they never left. The final chapter is about those who didn't return, but became immortal in memory, in culture, and in our hearts. A Little Angel. And the ending that made Hollywood weep Judith Barcy, the voice behind The Land Before Time, was called The Next Shirley Temple. But behind the spotlight, her father was abusive, jealous, and threatening. At just 10, Judith was shot dead by him, along with her mother, before he took his own life. Hollywood was shaken. A star just beginning to shine, extinguished forever. She didn't return. But each time you hear that crystal-clear voice, she's still alive. From comedy hero to symbol of silent sorrow, Robin Williams, who made the world laugh, carried deep, silent depression within. When he left, no one could believe it. A comedian, choosing death. But that was the harsh truth of souls who make the world laugh while crying in silence. Robin didn't return. But whenever we remember him, we smile, then tear up. A fallen monument, and a painful lesson, Heath Ledger, only 28 when he played Joker. A performance that became legendary, but also drained his soul. Sleepless nights, anxiety, and overwhelming pressure ended in a drug overdose. The Oscar came later, but the recipient was gone. He didn't return. But every time the Joker smirks, we don't see the character. We see the man who gave everything for art. Frozen talent in Time, River Phoenix. A born talent, expected to change Hollywood. But pressure, drugs, isolation, and one fateful night at the Viper Room took him at 23. His death was a wake-up call for an industry that neglects sensitive souls. He didn't return, but his image, forever in his 20s, remains beautiful, sad, and mysterious. A saxophone's echo and dreams left unfinished Lisa Lopes, member of TLC, the legendary girl group of the 90s. She didn't just sing, but wrote, directed, and had a unique vision. A car crash in Honduras ended it all. A final vlog she filmed minutes before her death shook the world. Not every ending has a resurrection, but sometimes there's no need to return, because some people with just one appearance are unforgettable. If you've ever cried for them, ached for them, or seen yourself in them, they are still here, in the spotlight, in our collective memory, and in you. Lisa didn't return, but her music still whispers a gentle farewell to the world.